What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So I want to talk today about what is at stake for Sean Strickland and for Fluffy Hernandez in their fight next week. Because bear in mind, I thought this was happening this weekend. It is actually happening the following weekend. We have this weekend off. I may still stick to releasing the in-depth technical breakdown video this Friday, as I've been promising. Though I am tempted to push it to Monday because it'll be a little more, better for the algorithm, I think, because it'll be more timely at that point. But it's basically ready. All the tape study is done. I just need to record it and put it out there. But that's coming. I'll keep you posted. But before I move on to other topics, because I'll make, at least one more video this week that's to do with, some random MMA topic, because nothing's going on in the current events. We don't have a fight this weekend. But I do want to talk at the moment about the matchup itself and what it means for both guys. I'm not going to give any predictions. I'm not going to give any inclination or any technical analysis. That's all coming for the deep dive. But just in terms of what does a win mean and what does a loss mean for Strickland and Fluffy, respectively. I think they both have a really good shot at getting a title shot off of a victory. Because I get it, Strickland is coming off a loss. He's lost 2 of his last 3, and the Costa fight was not very exciting. However, if he can beat Fluffy, if he can beat a young guy on an 8-fight win streak, that by itself means a lot. And Strickland is still popular. I know people have come around to the fact that his style isn't very exciting because for many people, they knew him more for his shit talk and for the sensationalist things he would say. And then they saw the Israel Adesanya fight, which had a very exciting first round, despite the fight itself not being that exciting. And it was emotionally exciting in the moment just because he was the underdog and it was holy shit, he's actually doing it. Since then, people have kind of come around. But nevertheless, he is still very popular. He's still one of the, he's probably one of the top 5 most popular fighters in the UFC. And he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting of that himself. I mean, his shtick of just beating the shit out of the YouTubers in sparring sessions is a good shtick. Yeah, I mean, it gets views. And on top of that, should he beat Fluffy, he'll just have a decent argument for getting a title shot. He won't, I think, have an argument of getting it over Imanov, but I think he would have an argument for getting it after. Because if you think about it, yes, Dricus has beaten Sean. They're not going to do a trilogy fight, but Dricus just got mauled by Chimaev, and we don't know what Dricus is going to do next. RDR has been effectively removed from the title picture, and he was removed by Brendan Allen, who himself has lost to both Strickland and Fluffy. Imanov, who, should get the shot ahead of Strickland should he win. Imanov has lost to Strickland. So it's people joke about how well Strickland's wins typically age, and they do. He's still sitting okay in the division. And I think, they would give him a shot at Chimaev if things timed out, if he was able to get past Fluffy. And in Fluffy's case, he'd overwhelmingly deserve the title shot. I think with his 9-fight win streak and with the names on that streak, he'd have a stronger case, I would argue, than Imanov does. I'm fine with giving it to Imanov, but really, I feel if you look at the body of work, not only is the win streak better, but beating Sean is arguably better than beating Izzy. Beating Michelle Pereira is analogous to beating Kyle Barrio. They both beat Allen. It's honestly, is the they both beat Dolidze. It's is the body of work of Imanov, which is very good at the moment, is it actually better than what Fluffy's been doing? I'm not convinced. And on top of that, while Imanov's got good hands and everything, stylistically, I think we're more compelled to see a high-volume grappler like Fluffy take on Chimaev. And in the case of Strickland, if he can survive against Hernandez and beat him, that's a good argument for him having at least a chance at beating Chimaev, at least having a chance of overcoming the grappling. Now, spoiler alert, I'm not going to touch on the matchup itself at all, but I will just spoil that no matter who wins, I'm not picking either of them to beat Chimaev. I don't think either of them, should even be close in terms of the odds. I feel like they should both be pretty huge underdogs against Chimaev. But nevertheless, of all the people to feed Chimaev to, the most compelling matchup will be a grappler like Hernandez or a guy like Strickland if he can defeat a grappler like Hernandez. So, again, all this is to say that the winner, could get a title shot, and especially if it's Fluffy, could even get it over Imanov. And if they lose, they're still in similar spots, but they're not in quite the same spot. Because if Sean loses, he's in Israel Adesanya territory. He's getting up there in age. I think he's 34. Might even be 35, but I think he's just 34. But he'll have then, at that point, lost 3 of his last 4, and neither of them to the sitting champion. It's he's just not going to ever get a title shot at that point, I think. Maybe try to take a money fight or something, because, again, he does have some status, he does have a name. But it would be bad if he lost. And for Fluffy, it wouldn't be quite as severe in the sense that he's younger, he could rebound. But nevertheless, if you lose your potential top contender fight against an aging former champion, that's basically the spot Paddy Pimblett's in, And granted, I think Fluffy has more skill as far as being a top dog in his division than does Paddy. Not even necessarily because he's that much better of a fighter, but because the division's not as good. But in any case, Fluffy, while a younger guy, is not that young. I think he's 32. He's kind of right in his prime right now. This is the moment. The iron is hot and it is time to strike. And if he whiffs it by losing to Strickland, that could be it. That could mean he never gets that title shot. It wouldn't be unthinkable. I would like his chances better than I would like Strickland's if Strickland loses. But it's still be pretty bad. So the stakes are pretty high. I think it's very much if you win, you're either guaranteed a title shot in Fluffy's case, or you're near to one in Strickland's case. And if you lose, there's either a great chance you never fight for the belt again in Strickland's case, or a pretty decent chance you never fight for it in Fluffy's case. So it's as much as this is sort of an old guard versus new guard sort of fight, nevertheless, it feels like a sort of, not a loser leaves town fight, but both of your destinies hinge on this kind of fight. And to me, that only adds to how compelling of a matchup it is, because, again, while I'm not going to go into detail and I'm not going to give any inclination which way I'm leaning, I will say that the further I've dived into this fight technically, the more intrigued I am by it. I'll just say that. And, again, this kind of career arc drama layered on top of it, and with the additional intrigue of having Chimaev as champion, which is only diminished by the fact that we're all collectively worried he's just going to be insanely inactive. But that aside, the intrigue of having a guy like that as champion, all this combines to make this main event of the following week's card pretty fucking compelling, if you ask me. The card itself not very strong. Maybe it'll feel stronger after this week off here. It's so bizarre that we've had 2 numbered events, a decent fight night, and it's all front loaded like that. Then we get a week off, then we just get these very weak fight night cards going forward. And we've had so few title fights announced, and I know it's because, or almost certainly because, they're waiting to see how things sort of line up negotiation-wise as far as the upcoming White House card. But nevertheless, a fucking weird way to start the Paramount deal. Not necessarily a bad way, but a fucking weird way. I'll just say that. But that's all I got right now. Again, there will be at least one more topic video coming out this week, and then the technical deep dive will either come out Friday or Monday. We'll see.